Hello, I'm Ruth Etches, nutritionist, functional medicine practitioner, and specialist in brain health and mental well-being. Now, if I was to say to you protein, what bodily system would that make you think about? Very often when people think about protein in the diet, they think about building muscle. They think about getting strong, getting lean perhaps, eating more protein as part of a low carb, high protein weight loss diet. Sometimes people think about eating more protein after a period of illness to rebuild and repair. But what if I told you that protein is an absolutely essential macronutrient for our mood, and in particular for building our neurotransmitters? So it's really common for me in my clinic to see clients who have all sorts of mental health disorders, and very commonly related to perhaps anxiety or low mood, depression, and more. And often when I see these clients, they have often tried the conventional medical route, pharmaceuticals, and then often dabbled in the world of sort of more supplemental support. So taking things like adaptogens such as ashwagandha, saffron, ginseng, L-theanine, lemon balm, and all of these supplements, these supplemental adaptogens can be incredibly helpful in terms of regaining a balanced mood. However, and this is something that I'm seeing more and more commonly, what I do see is that in many of these cases, the building blocks and the actual foundations can be quite wobbly, and in many cases can just be missing or absent. So in order to have a balanced mood, we need balanced neurotransmitters. And when we're thinking about neurotransmitters, we might think about our serotonin, which is really important for feeling happy and having a good upbeat mood. We might think about our dopamine, which is critical for our motivation and reward pathways. We might think about our noradrenaline, which is really important for focus, or our GABA, which is important for feeling calm. And in every case, in order to build these neurotransmitters, we need the teeny tiny building blocks called amino acids. And where do these amino acids come from? They come from the protein in our diet. Now, some of these amino acids are essential, which means that we can only get them from our diet. We cannot make them, we cannot produce them in our body. Thinking about, for example, tryptophan, the amino acid needed to make serotonin, our happy hormone. Thinking about phenylalanine, from which we make tyrosine, which is a building block to make dopamine, and then noradrenaline. And if we don't have these building blocks in the diet, then it's likely that our neurotransmitters will be imbalanced or potentially quite deficient, causing mood disorders. So is the fix as simple as just eating more protein? Well, maybe, and certainly it can be a good place to start. So for some clients that I see, they simply may not be eating enough protein. Perhaps they are following quite a standard Western diet, eating cereal and toast for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, a bowl of pasta for dinner, and perhaps snacking on biscuits and pastries in between. So a very high carbohydrate intake, but quite low in protein. For other clients, they may be following a low protein vegan or vegetarian diet, perhaps with not enough focus on the protein in the diet, and perhaps not having complete sources of protein in the diet. For other people, and I would say that this is the more common group I see, it may not necessarily be about the quantity of the diet, the protein in the diet. So they may be getting enough protein and eating plenty of animal protein, eggs, or good complete sources of vegetarian protein. But it may be much more about the ability to break that protein down. So ultimately, yes, we are what we eat, but in reality, we are what we manage to absorb from that nutrient intake. So what sorts of things might be affecting protein absorption? Well, in order to break down our protein in the diet, we really need good levels of stomach acid or gastric acid, otherwise known as HCl. And we know that gastric acid does decline naturally as we age, particularly starting sort of mid-30s onwards. So if I see anybody from middle age and older than that, I'm automatically thinking, how good are their levels of gastric acid? Are they breaking their proteins down? The second thing that can have a really major impact on our gastric acid, and particularly in the group of clients I see that may be struggling with stress, anxiety and low mood, is the impact of stress and anxiety on our gastric acid, because we know that being in a stressed state or an anxious state when we eat is going to have the effect of shutting off our gastric acid. So we're really going to struggle at that point, and this is one of the reasons that we very often see indigestion and digestive symptoms occurring alongside anxiety, stress, low mood. And this really can lead to a vicious cycle where we get impaired levels of gastric acid as a result of being stressed and anxious when we eat. And then as a result, we're just not able to break down our proteins into the amino acids to then be able to build our neurotransmitters. So you can see how this can be problematic. And the third big reason is the widespread use of a medication called PPI, which is a proton pump inhibitor. So common names would be things like omeprazole, lansoprazole, and these are commonly used and prescribed for things like acid reflux, IBS, and so on. But very often they are prescribed for long-term use, and this can have a negative impact long-term on our ability to break down those proteins due to having low HCl, low stomach acid. So can we test for this? Well, in my clinic, one of the tests that I commonly will do on my clients where I see that this might be a problem is to test for amino acids in the bloodstream. And it's amazing how often I find that these amino acids are quite low or quite compromised. And then using this test result, we can then really put together a tailored plan focusing on rebalancing these amino acids to improve mood. Sometimes we will also use a complete amino acid supplement if I see that the amino acids are very deficient, and we may also add in extra protein to the diet and work on that underlying breakdown of protein to get that person really digesting and absorbing as well as they can from their diet. So is there anything that you can do today without having blood tests to see what your amino acids are doing? If you're thinking perhaps this could be you, what can you do to improve your protein, to improve your protein digestion, and to help with building these neurotransmitters? Well, there's loads that you can do today. So number one, make sure that you are getting good quality protein at every meal. So this means every meal, every snack contains some form of protein. So good sources of protein includes your animal protein, so thinking about eggs, meat, fish, and then vegetarian sources of protein including beans, legumes, nuts and seeds. And for many people, they might also benefit from supplementing a good quality protein powder as well. Number two, make sure that you are eating in a mindful state. So this feels like it might be a bit fluffy, I don't know, but in actual fact, we know that when we eat in a calm, mindful state, so we're not rushing around eating on the go, and we are sitting and focusing on the flavors and the textures of our food, that we do a couple of things. One is that our stomach is prepared to receive that food, and the other thing is we tend to slow down, we tend to chew better. So get yourself into a calm state before you have that first mouthful of food. Perhaps take a few deep breaths, making the out breath longer than the in breath. Get yourself into a calm state, slow down and chew well, and this will give your body the best chance of absorbing the protein from the food you're eating. And number three, think about perhaps if you know you suffer from some indigestion, symptoms like belching after a meal can be a classic indication, perhaps having early fullness, feelings of bloating. Perhaps this is a sign that your stomach needs a little bit of extra support with its digestion. So you might consider some simple strategies such as eating a few bitter leaves, a small bitter salad before beginning a meal. There are digestive bitters available on the market that can be taken in a little bit of water before you start a meal to really help to stimulate your body's stomach acid. Now, for some people, you might need a little bit more support, and this might come in the form of supplementing with some digestive enzymes that contain some HCl with betaine. So this is the really important component that's going to support your stomach acid and enable that breakdown of proteins. So always check, please, with a practitioner, particularly if you are on any medications before you start taking any supplements. There's a few things to help you to start thinking about this. So I hope that has been helpful today and has helped you to start thinking about the importance of protein for our neurotransmitters and therefore our mood and our mental health. So do let me know if you have any comments, and if you're watching this on YouTube, then do feel free to subscribe below to get future updates. Bye for now.